Hello and welcome back to the channel. Normally we've been working on sword videos, and now we're going to switch gears and work on an Aikido video. If you'd like other videos on swordsmanship, I'd suggest you clicking on the link above. Probably one of the hardest things for a beginner to get is to do the actual roll without injuring themselves. Now, for doing an Aikido roll, we're going to cover three things. Number one, we're going to give you the basics of the Aikido roll. And number two, we're going to go over common mistakes and why you can injure your shoulders by doing it certain ways and how to correct that. And number three, if you're going to do advanced rolling where you're jumping and flying across the room, what are some things you need to understand before you do that? Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you have to do is your hips have to be square to the front. So hips are square to the front. From the side view, hips are square to the front. Now, with the hips square, the next thing you'll do is just lean forward a little bit and get the shoulder about in line with your front foot. So if I'm to the side, here would be straight. You're just leaning over a little bit to get the shoulder in front. Okay, now that you're forward, what you want to do is you want to rotate your waist. Rotate your waist until your shoulder is now over that front foot. So now that you have rotated, now this is the hardest part to understand, is take the scapula, which is this bone back here, and you're gonna push it forward. So from the side view, you're gonna take your scapula, so you've rotated, you push your scapula forward, and this is gonna protect or lead to protecting your shoulder by pushing your scapula forward and out. So now that we've turned, rotated, pushed my scapula forward away from my opposite hip, now I'm going to extend my elbow, and as you can see, this is starting to make a circle. So I go from square on, like if I was doing a somersault type roll in gymnastics, to now I have my hips are square, I have turned my torso, and I have now extended my shoulder, extended my elbow, and now I'm going to have my hand face the back wall or face towards my knee. Now that is a circle. So now I'm going to do the roll. I'm going to hip square, going to bend over, turn my torso, extend my shoulder up, extend my elbow out, curve, pull this shoulder back. I'm going to go up on this pivot point until I touch here. Once I touch, then I'm going to let my center go over the top, and then I'm going to roll. Okay, so let's do this from the front going forward. So I'm going to keep my hips square. I'm going to bend over a little bit. I'm going to turn at the torso here. I'm going to extend my shoulder forward. I'm going to push my elbow out. I'm going to make a circle with my front hand, my palm facing back. And then as I roll, I am going to go down, lift up on my leg, put my weight on this leg, and then I'm just going to tip over the point at which I roll. Now we're going to go over the most common mistakes and how to correct those mistakes. The first mistake people generally make is when I go to roll, I'm going to go down here and my bottom is going to fall off to the side, and you're going to do what's called a barrel roll. So instead of having the bottom go up over the top as you roll, as you plant your hand, you are going to fall to the side. Now I'm going to demonstrate what that mistake looks like. So I start to roll straight, and then my bottom falls over, and then I roll sideways. Okay, this next roll is when you take your shoulders, you were turned, but then you go to roll and you straighten up your shoulders, then you can damage your shoulder joint. So what happens is when you go to roll, you get scared of the ground, so instead of pushing forward into the roll, you will pull or retract this shoulder back, and then you'll straighten up to the front as you roll. And what that does is that pulls your shoulder back. So instead of having a nice antenna to use to do the roll where you're pressurizing the whole arm, you pull back and you touch here and here. And that's why you can get hurt, is because you're pulling your shoulder back and you land more on your shoulder. Okay, the next mistake is a little harder to see, but what happens is as you're going towards the mat, you actually collapse. See, my center is trying to head towards the mat, so you tend to collapse as you're going towards the mat instead of letting your center go up over the top. So what has to happen is you're going towards the mat. Instead of collapsing, you have to get your center up over in order to do the roll. Okay, now to alleviate these mistakes, you really need a partner to help you with this exercise. What they're going to do is they're going to start with their knees tucked so they're as close to the ground as they can get, and on their elbows so you have a flat back to work with. Okay, so now that he is in that down position and his arms are extended a little bit so I can reach around him, I'm going to stand here, and as I step, I'm going to use his body to support my body weight as I go over the top. So I'm going to step, kneel down. Now as I tuck, or as this arm comes through, then I can come up. So I'm basically using his weight to support my body as you go over the top. If you're having trouble doing this here and just rolling over him in support, you can actually get your center of gravity closer to the ground. So what I'm going to do is when I step in here, I am going to step, my body is going to get closer, my hip's going to touch his hip, and then I'm going to roll over the top, but supporting my body weight as I'm going over the top. Again, so talking through this, as I step forward, I turn my body, extend my scapula, extend my arm, and then I have this hand here to support my body weight. So as I step, I'm going to step, support my body weight, and go over the top. So once you can do it down on all fours, then you're going to come up so you have more room underneath, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to step and roll, do the same thing, except I'm going to step and roll over the top. So here over the top. So, and then you can use them as support. Next concept is, where do you put your hand in relation to the mat? And that's real important. It's in relation to the center speed that's going forward. So if I'm just sitting here and I place my foot and my hand way out here, I've got to get my center to go up over the top as I roll. So if I'm on the ground and I'm not moving, the more I can tuck my hand, the less I have to get my center up over the top, and it makes it easier to do a roll. So instead of doing a roll out here where I have to lift my center up over my pivot point, here I can tuck, and then as I go forward, I'm going to push over. So now, to start from standing, it's a little more difficult to judge that distance, but if I'm going to just roll from here and I'm extended out and forward, if I extend out in this position and then I'm going to roll, I want to put my hand as close as I can so that when my pivot point goes over, I'm as close to the mat without driving myself into the mat. So now if I'm going to roll out, I'm going to want to put my pivot point farther out because my my hips are going a little faster, so I'm going to rotate my hips over the top. So I'm going to extend farther out if I'm going faster. Now, one thing I want to say is if you're rolling, if I use this hand for support, I don't want to bring my shoulder forward because then I'll get more into this square position. I'm going to hurt this shoulder. So if I am going to reach down to support with this hand, I pull this shoulder all the way back. You don't want to pull that shoulder back with the hand like you're reaching out. Okay, now there's some advanced concepts you need to understand if you're going to roll a long distance. Okay, the first is as the mat touches your hand, don't just passively go into the roll. As I touch, I'm going to push into the mat. So my arm's going to push this way when it touches here, when it touches here. So I'm going to actually push back against the mat. And the reason you do that is because if I'm going to jump all the way across the mat and land over there, my torso is going to be going more in this a straight line. So I've got to be able to put my arm down and support it by pushing out. So that kind of lifts my hips up and over the top as your momentum's more going straight. Now, another concept is I can actually use this hand for support, but you don't want to bring this shoulder forward with that hand. You have to keep the shoulder back, even if you're going to do some support. So here's an example. So when I'm here, I can place this hand down, but I don't want to bring the shoulder forward. I want to keep the shoulder back. So as I do a roll, I can support, put this down, and use that for support. So now for a quick review, I start out, my hips are straight. I'm going to step with my right leg if I'm going to roll on my right shoulder. The first thing I'm going to do is bend forward. As I'm going forward, I'm going to turn my torso. That puts my shoulder a little bit forward. Now I'm going to take my scapula, I'm going to push it out, and I'm going to push my arm into an arc. Okay, so it makes an arc. I'm going to pull this shoulder back, and when I roll, I'm going to kind of tuck my head a little bit. Now, where to look, you're going to kind of look at your hand, because if you start looking this way, you're going to barrel roll. So straight down, and then as I touch the ground, I'm going to allow my hips to go straight up over the top. So as I pivot, I'm going to allow my hips to go straight up over the top, and then I'm going to roll. I hope these tips are helpful for doing a forward roll. Once you get the forward roll down, then we can move on to break falls. So our next video is going to cover all the steps necessary to do an effortless break fall where you're not going to hurt yourself. If you'd like to see other videos we produce on swordsmanship and Aikido, if you like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification, you'll be notified when we come out with another video. Again, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.